Hey y'all, Pastor Emil here with another episode of Sweet Jesus. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Ice cream is sweet, but Jesus is far sweeter. Back in the podcast studio with Mr. Scott, who's got quite a shirt on today.
Yep, can't see it. Can you? To move this.
Look at that. Oh yeah, look at that. All those superheroes, maybe you've seen it before. You got Spider-Man upside down. You can kind of tell that. All the superheroes present and surrounded is Jesus. Jesus at the center there, surrounded. And that's how I save the world. Yeah. Very cool, very cool. We are continuing to kind of look through some parables here. And we actually, Scott gave me one, was it yesterday or today? You said the one about new and old treasures.
Yes, this morning, I think.
Well, but then he sent me one like an hour ago that was, hey, how about these from Luke? And we were sitting here like, oh, well, I didn't really look at that. And then we're just sitting here looking at Luke 14 and recognizing the day that we are on today, April 9th. And we said, you know what? Let's go do the Luke thing, even though we have absolutely no idea what we're going to talk about. Just kind of flying by the seat of our pants here. But here's why. Today is the day that Dietrich Bonhoeffer, or if you're a snooty Lutheran, Bonhoeffer, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he was killed today about, was it 60 and 80 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
So 80 years ago today, a German Lutheran pastor who resisted Hitler in Nazi Germany, he was killed in a concentration camp just about, I don't know, like a week or two before the Allies actually showed up. And the heading over this section in my Bible, and probably most Bibles, it says the cost of discipleship. The Cost of Discipleship is actually the name of a book that he wrote back in 1937, I believe. It's been republished many times, updated, and all that kind of stuff. But so it seemed appropriate that we should maybe tackle the one that came on us last, regardless of whether or not we have thought of anything important to say. And that we're going to chalk up to faith. We're going to say this is all about faith. We're going to trust God and let the Spirit move.
Oh, considering that was the name of his book, and that's what.
Exactly.
How is that possible?
That's why I was like, all right, I guess we should just do this.
Did you think I was that smart, or that I actually knew that? Maybe I did read the book on Bonhoeffer, but I didn't, or Bonhoeffer.
Not heifer.
Oh.
Heifer.
Yeah,
I don't know. Whatever.
yeah.
I'm not German, but that I heard plenty of that at the seminary. You know, like it's Bonhoeffer. So yeah, no, I didn't think of it until literally like 2 minutes ago when I said, you know what today is, and so yeah, I don't know, but it seems like a God thing. Mm-hmm. So God uses all kinds of people, even you, Scott, even me.
Very good. I'm sometimes used as the doorstop, but that's okay.
Feels like it, yes. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. But Luke 14:25 through 33, Jesus is talking to some crowds. Now, great crowds accompanied him, and he turned and said to them, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, "This man began to build and was not able to finish"? Or what king going out to encounter another king in war will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? And if not, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So therefore, any one of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. Whew. So after you pick yourself up off the floor, I don't know, what are the first things that come to your mind?
Harsh, or difficult, trials, I guess, or that type of thing.
So the one thing that always, that I've noticed in a lot of these things, especially the ones in Matthew 13, they often emphasize an in and an out, right?
Mm.
Like you're in or you're out.
Mm-hmm.
The dangers, the
for and against,
so many things. Not always, but I think this one is just, I think you cannot deny whether or not you believe in hell the way that, the Orthodox or the traditional Christian understanding of hell and all of that, then it doesn't matter. You can't ignore the fact that there's an in and an out with Jesus' teachings. Jesus is the least, while he is also the most compassionate and kind and welcoming, he is also the least, right? Maybe not the least compassionate, but he's at least got a cutoff, a boundary,
a standard.
A standard, yes. And I think you have to consider it within the overwhelming testimony of grace in Scripture. Nevertheless, we should always be putting ourselves under the microscope that is his own words, right? Jesus says the hardest things in the Bible, and yet everybody seems to be okay with Jesus, just not Christianity. And it's like, did you read what Jesus said? Because, I'm pretty sure, the nice things that you like and the example of love and sacrifice and all that kind of stuff that you tout, right? What about his words? So
what I'm seeing as I'm looking to this a little closer is it's like it seems to be like the different aspects of your life, right? So the first one is like your relationships with your, especially your family. Those are probably your closest relationships. Father, mother, wife, children, brothers, sisters, and then even your own life. And then the second one is your own personal achievement, I guess, or something along those lines, because it's whoever does not bear his own cross. So that's something you're doing specifically. Is not, it's not your family or whatever. It's how you're going to live your life. And then the third one seems to be like about society, right? Because who's going to want to do something halfway, get done, and then be scoffed at by everybody in the village or, everybody in your society is going to look at you and say, well, he talked a big game and didn't quite get there. I'm not sure about where the king one goes yet, but as we were reading through it, that's what came to mind. So your relationships are up for grabs. Your personal achievements in life are up for grabs. Your societal reputation is up, is up there.
Well, it's kind of interesting because the mocking part is actually like, I think the way you're talking about it is more like, oh yeah, you have to not care about society and that they'll mock you, is sort of what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
But really what he's saying is, why would you do this? You don't want people to make fun of you for looking like a fool when you quit after it's only been a little while. Like, he's actually saying that's what people will do if
Mhm.
you start on a project and never finish it.
Right.
Um,
Right. So that's your
so it's actually an incentive to think before you take this leap
right.
rather than sort of a, I don't know.
Yeah.
I
So
don't
I
know if
guess
that's
when
making-
you're considering if you're going to call yourself a disciple or try to be a disciple, you better weigh the cost.
Well, yeah, that
Because society will mock you. I mean,
for leaving too, but they will mock you either way. But I think that's they don't expressly point out that these are parables, but that is essentially what they are. We've been working from a list in my study Bible, page 1609 has a list in the Lutheran Study Bible, has a list of parables, and it's got these listed. They have them separated, actually, 28 through 30, and then 31 through 33. So you've got which of you trying to build a tower doesn't first sit down and count what it's going to cost before you complete it? Otherwise, you laid a foundation and not able to finish it, and everyone's going to mock you. And then, or what king going out to encounter another king in war will not sit down first and deliberate, right? So this idea that you have to, we know that before you take on something with significant implications, significant public effort, I guess, you should probably think through what it's going to cost you before you start. I think that's the basic principle. I don't think it's really complicated. This is one of the most straightforward of the teachings of Jesus, the stories of Jesus. I think the thing that really smacks you upside the head is just the reality of what he's saying, because it's explicit. If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Now, does that mean that Jesus is saying, oh, you better hate your father and mother, and you better hate your children and your siblings and your wife? And I don't think that's what it is. I don't think it's literally hating them. I think it's a comparison, right? So, who do you love more? This is the first commandment. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Right? That's it. That's the number one thing. You shall have no other gods before me, the first commandment. And we can turn anything into a god. And I think the implication is that you will be forced to choose at some point. You will be forced to either elevate God over your own family or elevate your family over God. Like, that's how significant what it is to follow Jesus. That's how significant it is. That's how disruptive it is. That's how into the minute, the minute details, the smallest, finest points, he gets into that.
He starts out with that. That's probably of all the ones, that's the toughest one right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not for some. I'm sure there's plenty of folks that have really, really rough situations, stories with their family. They're like, oh, that's fine. I already hate him. I want nothing to do with him. I ain't going back for Thanksgiving if I can avoid it, right? I mean, so in that sense, but the broader point is essentially idolatry, What are the things that you love more than God? Maybe even good things that have become ultimate things. We can really mess things up by making them ultimate things. Your career, it's a great thing. Good to be successful and well regarded and helpful in your career. But if your career is everything, an ultimate thing, well, then what happens? Success trumps your relationship with your spouse, your relationship with your kids, your morality and ethics, so many things. And that's why that's why God says to love him first above all things. And Jesus is really doubling down on that. You got to be able to say, nope. The no to the people and things of this world in order to say yes to God. So I don't know if anyone's really thought that through these days. And I've looked at this many times, and sometimes I'm like, have I thought this through?
Says the man with 4 children and a dog.
Yeah.
A married man with 4 children and a dog. Yeah, I've kind of thought about that one too. It's like, so you always have to put yourself in kind of the extreme situation, where what's going to happen, if you're at that point and a family member of yours is just, you actually basically at the point where you have to choose between heaven and hell, or going with God or not going with God, and you have a family member that's just not going to go, or you don't know if they're going, but they're definitely don't seem to be on the God bandwagon, right? Yeah. So it's like, it's like you think about that. Am I going to try to, as much as you love them, are you going to try to stay with them? Would you choose them if you had to make that decision on the spot? Or are you going to go, I don't know if that's the right way to look at it, but I don't.
Well, I think there are always complicated situations where you are sort of being forced to choose, and depending on how close you are, like if it is a spouse or a parent, if you think about the context, first century, the people Jesus is talking to are all Jewish, right? They're Jewish people, and family's a very big deal for Jewish people. Not that it's not for other people, but it's a very big deal. Mm-hmm. Their religion was their culture. And here is this guy, Jesus, saying to a group of people that said, never, ever worship a human. That's actually proof that something significant happened. The resurrection was because all of a sudden, an enormous number of first century Jews said, okay, we're going to start worshiping a human being now. Like that, if there was thousands and thousands of years, it would be like, okay, their approach to faith has evolved. But it was literally overnight that Jews started worshiping a human being as a god. And not only that, but many of them started worshiping with non-Jews, Gentiles, right? Very quickly. So at a time, and this is actually still very true today, that Jews who become Christians often, and it's not just true of Jewish people, but it's true of Muslims and other religions, where if someone becomes a Christian, they are sort of giving up their family. They are going to have close family with strong influence over them, trying to dissuade them or completely disown them. My grandfather, stop me if I've already told you this story. My grandfather was Jewish, not really a practicing Jew, but there are a lot of those in the world. Mm-hmm. They're Jewish culturally, but not exactly practicing. They don't really read the Bible, the Torah, or anything. They don't go to temple. Maybe they celebrate Shabbat or Hanukkah or something every once in a while. But so he became a Christian at some point, and really it was his father was Jewish but never got his bar mitzvah because when he was 10 years old, he was playing drums all over New York City to make money for his family, essentially. So he never got that opportunity. When he got to that age, hey, you going to do this? Not going to do this? He's like, no, I got to keep working and make money for my family. So then consequently, you see how the significance was not there in his life. It wasn't the same level as it would have been for prior generations. His father had died, I think, that's why he was working. But then my grandfather comes along and just, yeah, okay, whatever. I didn't get it. You don't need it. And it's just not an important piece. But then he meets my grandmother. He meets a friend of his in the Marine Corps. He converts to Christianity, and there's a whole segment of his family that I've never met because that was it. That was the end. There's no more contact, no more association, cut off, disowned, whatever. And in the first century, that is how a lot of people approach this, because if you read the Bible, I mean, obviously the Gospels get, people get pretty ugly to Jesus enough to kill him. And then those same people are essentially the people that don't convert to Christianity, right? And they follow around his followers, in some cases, if you read the book of Acts, like actively going after them and trying to stop them from spreading this message. So he's not exaggerating for them.
Right.
For sure, that they are going to have to choose because the people that are in their family are going to make them choose. And we see that evidence in Scripture. Acts is, it's abundantly clear that this is becoming threatening to the Jewish leadership. And so he wasn't joking. He wasn't joking. And the challenge of the day, I mean, your family and all these connections, that was everything too. So it's like a shunning, the great shunning. You hear about this in like Amish communities, I think the Mormon community, not so much here, but as you get closer to Utah, sort of their headquarters, their main, where there's the most number of them, it can really affect doing business. Like you can't do anything once you're on the outs with people over something like this. And that's what they would have been experiencing in the first century. I'm sure it would have been a complete and total loss of all the opportunity that you needed for just everything. And so he's warning them ahead of time, hey, if you build a building, if you go to war, if you think about it ahead of time, think about this. Count the cost. So
is it more you think he's just saying, well, be prepared for it instead of, count the cost makes it almost sound like, well, if it's too difficult for you, don't come. But I don't think he's saying that. I'm thinking he's saying come, but realize these are the things that are going to happen.
Yeah, you're going to look really dumb if you back out later. So just, I'm giving you, here's the fine print. Read it carefully. Make sure you check that box, when you're doing whatever on the internet, right? You got to click the
EULA.
box. Yeah.
And user license, huh?
Yeah, the Apple terms and conditions that no one reads. Who knows what they're doing. So, but
But that makes sense in the context, right? Yeah, that, because it's like, why lead off with that? Because in our culture, it takes quite a bit. People just don't shun their family members, even if they're doing stupid things all the time. Or,
I mean, I do think that Christianity is becoming, at least it has been becoming, sort of less of a socially acceptable thing. I mean, there's definitely circles where, yeah, you would end up sacrificing a lot. For the last 20 years, I mean, they've done a good job labeling Christians as essentially ignorant idiots. And so if you're smart, if you have an education, if you're in the upper echelons of society and you become a Christian, there is this real, the reality that you may lose some friendships, you may lose some opportunities, you may lose on money, on business connections, on standing among friends and colleagues. So it's still a thing, but I do think that today maybe not as significant as back then. You can keep it to yourself, so to speak, as long as you're not shoving it down anybody's throat. They kind of let you get away with it.
I guess I wonder if this Dietrich, he used this, like you said, it was like the title of his book. So as he was looking at this, maybe was it like a foreshadowing of his life? Because I mean, if you read his life story, he definitely chose, to go to become a pastor. And, I mean, he did sacrifice a lot of different things to stay with that, even up into his life at the end, because I guess he was killed for being part of a coup on Hitler.
Yeah.
And he was in jail for that and almost was free. And nope, he didn't quite get out for it. But
yeah, just a couple of weeks
away. He had a fiance. Had met a woman at one point, and that was going through, not that he hated her. I mean, I think he still loved her. But anyway, that was part of something that he gave up. They were looking to get married when he got out of jail.
Yeah.
And they were writing letters to each other while he was in there, and she actually got to come and visit him a couple of times, I think. So, anyway. And then the war thing at the end, and it just seems like, this might be a good.
Well, and this was all in defiance of Hitler, essentially, who was a pretty bad guy. Pretty obviously a bad guy.
And the church body at the time splintered because part of it followed Hitler.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he cleaned house too. Like, he was trying to make the state church one that would be loyal to him.
Right. So I guess, what I'm saying is that Bonhoeffer opposed that, publicly opposed it. I mean, it was very dignified in his letters and stuff that he wrote.
Yeah.
But
well, and then he ended up coming to the States in the 30s and did a tour, where as like an academic, but also researching or just out of curiosity being in America. And he went back. They were offering him all kinds of stuff, positions. Hey, just stay here. We don't want you to go back and end up in trouble. And he's like, no, I got to go back. So he went back, took up his cross, followed Jesus. He was clearly in that position, put in that position by God, and stayed faithful. And, I've never really looked into this, but I know I've always had the thought, like, Yeah, so this supposed plot. Who knows if there was a plot or if he was even actually in it, but that was the reason they used. Why? Just because they knew, right? Enough of his writings, enough of his speaking and everything. He didn't need to actually be part of a plot to have gotten himself in that situation. That's what I'm saying, basically,
Right.
I guess.
Yeah, he was associated with people that were part of the plot.
Yeah.
And I know the first time they tried to bring the bomb to put it under Hitler's table, he was involved, at least knowing that it was going to happen, and it failed.
Mm.
And then I think they were planning a second one. And he was he wasn't going to be, I don't think the guy that was going to pull the trigger or plant a bomb or anything. But yeah, he was definitely, at least the book I read, he was definitely involved in planning and that type of situation. But I mean, it comes down to, I guess, how much of a crime is it if you're not successful at it?
Yeah.
I meant to go steal that ring, but.
Yeah, well, but I mean, even that, like, I don't know what the right way to say that is, because I mean, I don't think I would have necessarily.
He was part of the conspiracy.
I don't think he was wrong,
right?
But at the same time, here he is plotting the death of someone.
Yeah,
like murder, right? Assassination.
I think he talked about weighing the cost, and he felt it was worth what he was going, what could happen to him.
Well, but not just the fallout in an earthly sense, but, I mean, Jesus is pretty serious about murder, so much so that he said you shouldn't even be angry.
Right.
Right? But here, this effort for the greater good, I think pushes me back towards, okay, yes, there's these very high standards, and yet, why could he, or why would I or you eventually say, you know what? No, this has to be done. Why? Grace. Like, we trust enough in a gracious and merciful God that even if we cross the line on something to do that, what we think is right for the greater good, even if we're breaking this rule here, we still trust in the grace and mercy of God to get us through when we get examined for this. So that's why I caution it, because I think sometimes people overdo it a bit. And really, ultimately, the only way you get in is the righteousness of Jesus Christ. So your ability to be a disciple doesn't get you in.
Right.
I think this is just a statement on, this is the reality. This is what's going to happen. Once you confess faith in me, right? Jesus is saying, be prepared, because this is what you're going to face.
I don't think most of us, or how many people do you think it would have to be an adult person that would be cognizant of to be able to weigh all of these things? A lot of us maybe grew up in a household and that at least had some type of Christian religious belief. You're kind of taught. You're not taught they're going through this channel, right? You're kind of going through a different way to get to God or whatever, not having to weigh, okay, you want me to come in, but if, if I come in, I'm choosing God over you or something. I don't know. That don't make any sense.
Like, you mean like if you're going to get married or something, if you're going to, like, oh, hey, well, you should say, you should be able to say to a spouse that, hey, I got to love Jesus more than I love you, because if I don't, then I screw this and everything else up.
Right.
That's actually something that, if you follow Jesus, right?
Most of us are probably not that mature, though, when we're getting married.
Probably not. Most are not. And I think even today, you know, we are trying to please our spouse more than we're trying to please the Lord. Although I think pleasing the Lord would involve pleasing your spouse.
Right.
Maybe not always. You know, though there are tough decisions. And especially, you know, like if you know ahead of time that somebody isn't on the same page as you are just asking for, you know, heartache and angst. And, you know, you're basically saying that, yeah, I'm willing to let them help me drift a little bit away from Jesus. Right? Just like the other way around, right? If you're not a Christian, you marry somebody who's a Christian, you're essentially saying, okay, I'm going to drift a little bit towards Jesus because now I'm going to have to put up with some of this on a somewhat regular basis. I'm going to have to at least hear it, acknowledge it, that it's something that is a part of their life. But I guess it can work both ways, where you have a positive influence on someone who's not, but it's really not a smart way to get started. You know?
Right.
If neither of you are Christian and somebody ends up there, you probably got a better shot there because you got an opportunity to see a change. But if you know ahead of time, man, just you are definitely going to have to hate your spouse more than your average, because then you just have to hate their flesh, but they also have the sinner and the saint, right? That's very Lutheran, you know, sinner and saint simultaneously, both at the same time. You marry a Christian, at least there's that saint part, you know. There's still the flesh, there's still the sinful part of them. But when you got somebody who's not a Christian, then it's all sinner. It's all flesh. It's all like, that's not to say they're not good people. It's just you're going to be wrestling that. It's very complicated. So I've seen it, and I know that's the only reason, you know, just watching the way that people have struggled over things like this. For a long time, people wouldn't marry you. They just wouldn't, you know. Obviously, times have changed quite a bit.
So that makes me wonder, though, then, so is this really, I mean, it applies to us as well, but these are really lessons really aimed directly at the disciples at the time, his disciples, right? Wait, these are the things that you, like you said, the first one, that's part of the way their society worked. You would be shunned, or whatever the word they used, you know, disowned if you did, you know, followed him versus staying with the Jewish religion.
Yeah.
You know, and down the line.
I think it's still totally,
but it seems really pointed, like sharpened toward that specifically.
I think it would. I think it's an easier application, whereas today it may not be as obvious, as readily obvious.
Because they're in a homogeneous society for the most part.
Yeah, and you see what happens shortly, right? I mean, they're only a few chapters away from everything going south,
right?
Really fast, and then Acts, which Luke wrote, both Luke and Acts. So, I mean, he's got to have that in his head, that experience, that information, because he says he's done a thorough investigation, and so this has got to be with all of that in mind. But that doesn't mean it's not said to us too.
Right.
It's definitely said to us. It's just, what does it mean to hate your father and mother, your wife, your children, your brothers and sisters, even your own life? I think it's Jesus, really. I mean, Jesus is calling us to this, but he's also the example. He didn't hate his father and mother, but he didn't let them override anything that had to do with his father in heaven, right? He gets lost earlier in Luke chapter 2. He gets left behind.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is lost. And I don't know how long it was, I forget, but it's clearly like a while, and they go, oh, where's Jesus? Wow. Parenting fail, and you got all this stuff about how, they would have had a big crew and everything. I don't care, still, man. And they start searching for him, and where do they find him? In the temple. Hey, why were you searching? Why were you all worried? Didn't you know I had to be about my father's business, or didn't you know I would be in my father's house? Huh. Right? So there he is. His heavenly Father is first. There are several points in the Gospels where it's clear that Jesus's family thinks he's crazy,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, whoa, guys, don't pay attention to him. He's just having a rough day. Jesus, come inside, And he's like, and in one spot in particular, I think it's Mark 3, somebody says, hey, your mother and your brothers, they're calling for you. And he says, who are my mothers and brothers? These are my mothers and brothers and sisters. The ones who do the will of my Father in heaven are my brothers, my mother and father and sister and brother. So there we see it, Jesus in this example. But at the end, Jesus is still caring for his mother. He's dying on a cross, and he says, woman, your son, behold your sons, behold your mother. And so he hasn't completely abandoned them. He doesn't hate them in the sense like, right? I mean, like I said before with murder, right? You're not even supposed to be angry with somebody, right? So it can't mean that the way we would use the word hate. It's more of a comparison, I think, that who wins when Jesus and your spouse are in a competition of some kind, competing for your attention, your loyalty, who wins? When your parents are competing for your loyalty with Jesus, who wins? When your kids are competing with your loyalty to Jesus, who wins? When your career is competing with your loyalty to Jesus, who wins? When your politics are competing with your loyalty to Jesus, when your everything. Jesus is supposed to win all of those things because Jesus is the King of the universe. So I think it's a call for us to examine ourselves and see where our loyalties may be in need of adjustment.
It does seem very Lutheran, though, right? So because it's so like an analytical of you're thinking about it's something you're thinking about. This is not a feeling. These are not feeling passages. These are I'm analyzing. Okay,
Yeah.
weighing. Right. So
Lutherans are thinkers.
Yeah.
Overthinkers, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, we could get into a whole big thing. Yeah, I think you're supposed to use your brain.
Definitely.
Like you should. God gave it to you for a reason. The faith is a reasonable faith, although within limits, right? Like there's a limit to what you can and cannot understand. Maybe we shouldn't shut it down so quickly, and maybe we shouldn't let it go on so long. Depends on the type of person you are, depends on maybe the topic you're wrestling with. Sometimes we just have to say, all right, God, fine. But I don't think it's wrong to think.
No.
And in this case, Jesus is saying, you better think about this. If you don't think about anything else, think about this. Your life's going to be hard, like really hard. Like this is I mean, have you experienced, like this idea? Like, have you felt conflicted about, hey, I'm a Christian, and wow, my life has really been complicated because of that in this way? I mean, like in a modern kind of growing up in a very much more of a Christian culture than maybe we're in right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably. I'd have to think. I can't think of a specific example though that I can give right off. Hmm. No, I can't. I'm not coming up with. I can't think of anything like as an example that would be like that specifically, but I'm sure there were things along the way. Drawing a blank.
But it's really, the whole thing is just, your life is not your own. This is from
Right.
Sunday, right? Your life is just not your own anymore. And so that means all the people that had a claim on your life, they don't have the same claim on your life anymore. They don't have the claim on your finances, your time, your heart, even. Your heart should be directed more towards, well, let me think about this God who did more for me than my parents or my spouse or my kids or ever will.
I think it's in my case, it's more of like a slow thing. Whereas these particular people, his disciples that he's speaking to, they were Jewish, and now they're about to be not Jewish.
Yeah.
It was like night and day, sunrise, kind of thing. Whereas with in my life, it's kind of been, or in America, you can kind of just more open to a variety of things. So it wasn't as many people trying to force you to be one way or the other.
Yeah.
Right. So it was kind of, for me, it was as I was like, these kind of concepts, I didn't have this until much later on. I believed in God, I believed in Jesus, but if I'd have read this first, I'd have been really, I might have been like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the first time I read this, I was like, wait, what? Especially, the hate to your mother and your father kind of thing.
Well, it's interesting too. We didn't bring this up, but now great crowds accompanied him, and he turned and said to them, right? Like, it's the reverse of what we do. What we do is we say, oh man, there's nobody here. How can we get more people here? All right. And Jesus says, man, look at all these people. Let me thin this out a little bit. I mean, you can do that in some ways that are not really all that great, but he's clearly doing it with a reality check. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, definitely maybe not the opener if you're sharing your faith with somebody.
I mean, I didn't grow up in a predominantly Catholic, like Louisiana, South Louisiana is predominantly Catholic. So I knew I wasn't Catholic per se. Can't really say as a younger person, I really knew what the difference was. Just knew that there was a difference. And it was kind of more obvious from the other side because I didn't go to their church.
Yeah.
So they recognized me as being different before necessarily I knew why we were different, or why would you even think I'm different? We both believe in God. We both believe in Jesus. So why am I, kind of thing. So I remember being in like little league type sports kind of thing. And they would have routinely, which, try this nowadays. The coach was probably most, he was, well, definitely this guy was a Catholic. So he invited one of the priests to come and pray with the team before the game. And I was just kind of, I was fine with it, but I knew immediately he didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
And that I wasn't probably not one of quote them.
Yeah.
So, and then they did certain things that they are taught in like Catholic school or Catholic church or
Yeah.
whatever. And I'm like, I'm lost because I didn't know what any of that stuff was. So I just stayed, just stood there quietly, I didn't run away or say anything like, this is ridiculous. What are you doing or anything? I just listened and tried to learn what was going on. But anyway, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if that's an example, but because we Catholics and Lutherans should be on the same team.
Should sort of be following Jesus, but obviously we have our differences.
But I know when my brother, when he married a girl that was raised Catholic, and the priest said, "No, you can't, unless you become Catholic, I am not doing this wedding."
Yeah.
And I don't know who decided. I don't know if it was her parents or if it was her, or all of them were in agreement. But no, it was going to be a wedding at a Catholic church. So he went through the whatever, took the classes or whatever that he'd had to take to do it.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was already a Christian. He was already, had gone to Lutheran church and stuff. So I don't know. Anyway, he did. And then they almost immediately started going to the Lutheran church after they were married. I'm telling on my brother now, so if he hears me, he'll be like,
Yeah, Catholics are one of the greatest evangelism programs for the Lutheran Church. Stories like that.
And I don't really know what happened that made them, because he joined and he did everything, so they could have gone there, whatever. But so his wife was in agreement with it. They started going to the church that they went to, whatever. So
yeah. Well, I mean, certainly you do find conviction where you need conviction, and you have to determine your loyalty, so to speak, where like, no, I think this is following Jesus and that's not. And so we pick churches, we pick denominations, we pick all kinds of stuff. And we should, but I also think, that's probably not the main thrust of this. I think.
Yeah, no, not at all.
It's every day. It's every day. What is your daily life look like? I do think that in a sense, as you were talking and just thinking about it, like there is a sense in which if everything's going correctly, right, you don't maybe notice it because you've just, how does he say it? It's renounced all that he has, cannot be my disciple, right? Like you've basically come to terms with like, my life is not my own. And you can, I think you can maybe just settle in. Like, yeah, this is just a way of life and I'm a disciple and I don't live for myself. And, how I spend my time and my money and, all of those different things and the choices I make. And I think you could get into a rhythm and you might not notice it. And especially in a place where Christianity is mainly accepted, on a very broad scale, it's generally okay as long as you don't do anything too nasty in the name of Christianity, right, or Jesus. So, but there are gonna be there should be a moment, and when those things sort of butt heads, that's when you start to know, right? You may not know it because it could just be so fluid and so sort of like natural for so long, and then all of a sudden, oh, wait a second. Kids sports, taking up Sundays. Like we've made that adjustment in the sense that, okay, well, every once in a while there's a swim meet that takes up a Sunday for our kids. And okay, well, if you want to go, you find a way there, because we're not going. I mean, we're except for like a few, like the few big ones, like the state meet type things. We're like, okay, you're going with somebody else, so find a way there, and you're going to watch it later. Like this is not like Jesus doesn't exist anymore just because you're busy on Sunday morning or something else is going on. Is that right? Or are we not renouncing everything? I don't know. I mean, I think
it's a hard one.
this is something that we should all constantly be examining ourselves with and ultimately make a change. That doesn't mean that it's a particular change or a particular kind of change. Like, oh, you're a Christian now, so you used to be a Republican, now you're a Democrat, or you used to be a Democrat, now you're a Republican. Like that, I think it's you're just different. And I think we all start in different places. I think we all have different circumstances. And I don't think it's like a cookie cutter answer. It's just, who do you love?
Right. That's
who do you love? To
like
quote, what's it, Cameron Fry?
Yeah, that's what when I was looking through these. It seems like it's really speaking toward the different aspects of your life that you examine yourself, right?
Yeah.
Your family, yourself, your society, the people you're around.
Yeah.
And however the king thing fits in there. Maybe that's a business decision type of thing, how you do your business, kind of, or,
yeah,
you're looking at it going, is this a good business decision to go against whatever? But in all your, I guess that is to strive for peace and don't just go to war with somebody. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tricky part of parables is you can begin to try and press on every single one of the details, but that may not really be the point. So I don't know if he's saying making peace with your enemy. I think he's saying, like, if you're a king and you're going to go to war,
make a good decision.
Make sure you're not going to get slaughtered. Yeah, like you make sure you can win.
Right.
And he's using a worldly way of thinking.
Right. I get you. Yeah, that makes sense.
But, who do you love? I think that, that Ferris Bueller, right? Cameron Fry.
Right.
Beating the heck out of his dad's car. Who do you love? You love a car. Right? I think that is maybe the right illustration that here's a dad who probably loved his son, and yet who did he really love? He loved his car.
Right.
And his son knew it.
Right.
Like it was obvious to him, or at least that's how he felt.
That's what he felt like, I think, yeah.
And so who do you love? You love a car? You love your son? Or do you love Jesus? Like, is that the thing that's obvious? And we don't ever, in my opinion, we don't ever fully get there. But that's why this is here. So we take a look at our lives under this microscope, under a microscope with this as sort of the lens that, hey, it's everything. And until you hate all these people and all these things, you probably still got a long way to go. But we managed to spend an awful lot of time talking about just Luke 14.
Okay.
So we probably don't need to do that,
Matthew,
all that other stuff. That gives us some time. Any final thoughts besides, hey, make sure you like and subscribe and buy these books over here. Nobody's Nola, Nola's Icelandic Adventure, Open Arms, Connecting People to Jesus. We didn't put that in there. Maybe we should say, oh, by the way, make sure when you find somebody who wants to know about Jesus, tell them that they have to hate everybody they know before they... I think we may actually use it on you, like the reader, like, this is supposed to be hard, right? Or at least it came up in our conversations about all those things. So,
final thoughts. I think my final thought is this will not be my final thought on these parables.
There you go. Well said. All right, y'all. Hey, great to be with you, and hope to catch up with you again soon. Like and share and subscribe and all those good things, and we will catch you later. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Ice cream is sweet, but Jesus is sweeter.